From pro players making brainless blunders to the most embarrassing blow-ups that changed careers, these are the dumbest moments in golf history ever recorded. And first we start with number 15. It's 2019. Rickie Fowler, one of golf's most popular players, is cruising along at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. He's in the lead. Everything's going great, until it wasn't. Now, we've all had bad breaks in golf, but what happened to Rickie that day was just plain weird. He's standing on the 11th hole, and his ball finds the water. No big deal, right? Happens to the best of them. So he takes his drop on a slope near the green. But then, he turns his back for just a second, and his ball decides to go on a little adventure. It starts rolling and rolling and rolling, right back into the water. And get this, because the ball was technically in play, he gets hit with another penalty stroke. You can just imagine Fowler standing there, watching helplessly as his ball takes that slow roll of doom. The look on his face said it all. Part disbelief, part, "You've got to be kidding me," and part, "What did I do to deserve this?" But here's what makes this story even better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. This wasn't just any ordinary round. This was the final round, and Fowler was trying to win the tournament. The amazing part? Despite this triple bogey, Fowler actually went on to win the tournament. But not before recording the highest final round score by a winner in tournament history. Moving on to number 14, we've got Bryson DeChambeau, golf's mad scientist, getting into an argument about, wait for it, a cart path. This happened at the 2021 World Golf Championships FedEx St. Jude Invitational, and it's exactly as ridiculous as it sounds. DeChambeau's tee shot on the par 4 6 hole ends up under some meshed fencing that defined the out of bounds on the hole's right-hand side. Already a tough break, right? Now most people watching at home immediately thought, well, that's out of bounds. But not so fast. This is where things get technical, and where Bryson, being Bryson, saw an opportunity. See, for a ball to be ruled out of bounds, the entire ball has to be beyond the boundary line of the course. The rules official did something pretty clever here. They laid a string between the two boundary stakes on either side of Bryson's ball. And wouldn't you know it? A tiny portion of the ball still intersected with that string. Lucky break. The ball was ruled in bounds. But Bryson wasn't done yet. Oh no. There was a cart path right there, and if he tried to play the ball from under the fence, he'd have to stand on it. Now, normally you get free relief from cart paths. They're what's called an immovable obstruction in golf's rulebook. But here's the catch. You only get relief if the shot you're trying to play is reasonable. So what does the rules official do? He asks Bryson point blank, if the cart path wasn't here, how would you play your ball? And without missing a beat, Bryson tells him he'd punch the ball out from under the fence back into the fairway. He convinced the official he could actually play that shot. He got his free relief from a cart path, while his ball was stuck under a boundary fence. For number 13, we're going back to 2003 to what might be the most heartbreaking mistake in golf history. Mark Rowe was having the round of his life at the Open Championship at Royal St. Andrews. He'd been grinding it out as a pro for over 20 years, had a few wins here and there, but this was his 14th appearance in a major championship, and he'd never really been in contention before. But this time was different. After a pretty rough start with a 77 in the first round, Rowe caught fire. He shot a brilliant 70 in the second round, one of the best scores of the day, just to make the cut. Then, in the third round, paired with Sweden's Jesper Parnevik, he shot a spectacular 67, matching Nick Faldo for the round of the tournament. When he walked off that 18th green, he was just 2 shots behind Thomas Bjorn's lead. But then something happened that would make any golfer want to crawl into a hole and never come out. See, in golf, you're supposed to swap scorecards with your playing partner at the start of the round. Simple enough, right? Except Rowe and Parnevik somehow forgot to do this. They played their entire rounds, marking down each other's scores on the wrong cards, and neither of them realized it until after they'd signed them. Now, here's where it gets really painful. Rowe had shot an incredible round that put him right in contention. But because he signed an incorrect scorecard, even though all the scores were actually correct, just on the wrong card, he was disqualified. Just like that, his dreams of winning the Open Championship went up in smoke, all because of a simple mix-up with the scorecards. The worst part? This was Rowe's last realistic chance at major championship glory. He never played in another major after this. Number 12 takes us back to 1950, to to one of the most bizarre moments in US Open history. The setting is Merion Golf Club, and we've got a three-way playoff between Lloyd Mangrum, George Fazio, and Ben Hogan. Now, Hogan had barely made it to this playoff. He'd struggled so badly with his putting in the final round, needing 38 putts, that he actually considered changing putters. His brother Royal even rushed one of Hogan's old brass putters to him on Sunday morning, but it didn't arrive in time for Hogan to practice with it. So he stuck with what he had. Through 13 holes of the playoff, things were incredibly tight. Hogan held a slim one-stroke lead over both Fazio and Mangrum. Fazio started to fade, making bogeys on 4 of his last 5 holes. But Mangrum? He was hanging tough. After a bogey on 14, he bounced right back with a birdie on 15 to stay within 1 shot of Hogan. Then we get to the 16th hole. Mangrum's on the green and he marks his ball so Fazio can finish out. Nothing unusual there. But then, after he replaces his ball, a bug lands right on it. Now, what would you do if a bug landed on your ball? Probably exactly what Mangrum did. He remarked his ball, blew the bug off, and holed his putt for what he thought was a par to stay within one of Hogan. But hold on, just as Mangrum's about to tee off on the 17th, here comes USGA rules official Ike Granger with some devastating news. See, back in 1950, the rules were different. In USGA championships, you could only mark your ball on the green in stroke play if it was in another player's line. That pesky bug? Not a valid reason to mark your ball. By marking his ball a second time, Mangrum had just earned himself a 2-stroke penalty. Just like that, Mangrum went from 1 shot behind to 3 shots behind. And Hogan? Well, he twisted the knife by draining a 50-foot putt for birdie at the 17th and parring the 18th to seal the victory. All because of one tiny bug that picked the worst possible moment to land on a golf ball. Number 11 brings us to Hideki Matsuyama, and an incident that perfectly shows how golf's rulebook can bite you when you least expect it. It's not a bad swing or an unlucky bounce that cost him. It was something no one could have ever expected. The scene unfolds at the 2022 Memorial Tournament, one of the most prestigious stops on the PGA Tour. Matsuyama, the 2021 Masters champion, tees off with his trusty 3-wood. Everything seems business as usual. But hold on, because this is where things get weird. By the time he finishes his opening holes, an eagle-eyed rules official notices something peculiar about the face of Hideki's 3-wood. It's covered in white paint. Not scuff marks or dirt. Actual paint. Neatly applied. Now let's break this down. Hideki's team had apparently added the paint to help him line up shots more precisely. A harmless tweak, right? Wrong. According to the rules of golf, anything applied to a club that could potentially influence how the ball behaves is considered a violation. And while the paint might have looked harmless, it crossed the line into non-conforming territory. So what happened next? Well, Matsuyama admitted he'd used the club during his round, and the rules officials had no choice but to deliver the ultimate blow. A disqualification. That's right. Hideki was out of the tournament not because of a bad shot or a rules misunderstanding, but because of a painted club face. The kicker? He only used the 3-wood for 1 shot before it cost him his entire week. For number 10, we've got Sergio Garcia showing us exactly how not to handle frustration on a golf course. The year is 2019, and we're at the Saudi International. Now, Sergio's always been known for his, let's call it, passionate approach to the game. But this time, he took things to a whole new level. It all started during Friday's round. Sergio's in a bunker on the par 5 4th hole, and something about the way it was raked has gotten under his skin. Now, any regular golfer knows bunkers aren't supposed to be perfect. They're hazards, after all. But Sergio wasn't having any of it. He takes his shot, and while it wasn't even that bad, what happened next was absolutely wild. He starts hacking at the sand like he's trying to dig to China, all while the cameras are rolling. But this tantrum was just the appetizer. The main course of Garcia's meltdown feast came the next day. Apparently not satisfied with just destroying one part of the golf course, Sergio decided to take his frustrations out on multiple greens. And we're not talking about just walking a bit heavy or dropping his putter in anger. No, he deliberately damaged 5 different greens. 5. The damage was so bad that players and groups behind Garcia started complaining about it. That's when you know things have gone way too far. This led to something unprecedented in professional golf. Garcia became the first player ever to be disqualified under Rule 1.2a, which covers serious misconduct. After the fact, Garcia did issue an apology, saying, "I respect the decision of my disqualification. I damaged a couple of greens, for which I apologize for, and I have informed my fellow players it will never happen again." A couple of greens? The reports say 5, Sergio. But hey, who's counting when you're in the middle of a meltdown? For number 9, let's talk about Patrick Reed and the moment that gave golf fans everywhere secondhand embarrassment. It happened at the 2014 WGC Cadillac Championship. And it wasn't about his swing, a rules violation, or even an unlucky break. No, this one came from his mouth. Reed had just won the tournament in impressive fashion, becoming the youngest winner of a World Golf Championship event at the time. Riding the high of victory, he stepped up to the microphone for his post-round interview. And that's when things got awkward. He boldly declared, "I'm one of the top 5 players in the world." Yep, just like that. No context, no explanation, just straight-up confidence. The problem? Reed wasn't even close to being in the top 5. In fact, he wasn't even in the top 20 at the time. Cue the collective facepalm from golf fans and analysts alike. But here's the thing. Reed didn't just talk the talk, he started to walk the walk. 4 years later, he won the Masters, solidifying his status as a major champion. And while he never officially cracked the top 5 in the rankings, he did climb to an impressive career high of 6th in the world in 2020. Not sure if this was overwhelming confidence or outright stupidity, but either way, it's a moment we'll never forget. Now at number 8, we've got Álvaro Quiros in a moment so stupid it almost feels personal. It happened at the 2015 Portugal Masters on the par 5 12th hole. Álvaro Quiros set up for what should have been a routine finish. But then, something totally unexpected happened. After reaching the green in 3 shots, he had a 10-foot putt for birdie. It wasn't the easiest putt, but it was definitely makeable. He lined it up, gave it a confident stroke, and just barely missed, leaving the ball inches from the hole. No big deal, right? A tap in for par would clean it up. Quiros steps up, gives it a gentle tap, but then, disaster. The ball hits the back of the cup, bounces straight up, and somehow pops out. It's as if the hole itself decided, "Not today, buddy." For a moment, Quiros just stares, frozen in disbelief. The crowd gasps, and even the commentators are left speechless. Sometimes the golf gods just aren't on your side. Here we are at lucky number 7. It was the final round of the season's first major event, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. On the 15th hole, a challenging 551-yard par 5, Cam Davis and Will Zalatoris were both poised for strong finishes. Davis, comfortably inside the top 10, was aiming for a career boost. Meanwhile, Zalatoris, on a comeback after a year-long injury layoff, was looking to prove he still had what it takes. But then, disaster struck. As they approached the green, both players realized they had unknowingly played each other's golf ball. A highly unusual error at this level, where meticulous ball marking is the norm. The blunder was as shocking as it was costly. The rules are brutal but clear. Both players were slapped with a 2-shot penalty and required to return to their previous positions to replay their shots. The result? Double bogeys for both, and a devastating hit to their scorecards. But it gets worse. If they hadn't caught the mistake before moving on to the next hole, they would have been disqualified. For Davis, the penalty dropped him from a promising top 10 finish to 14th place. Instead of a $700,000 payday, he walked away with just $400,000, a gut-wrenching $300,000 loss. Zalatoris didn't fare much better. Starting the day tied for 6th, he tumbled all the way to 26th, costing him $123,000. Combined, the mistake shaved nearly $1 million off their earnings. Beyond the financial hit, the implications were deeper. Davis missed a chance to solidify his position for future events. For Zalatoris, the mistake felt particularly cruel, an innocent error at a critical time in his comeback journey. Moving to number 6, we've got Michelle Wie at the 2008 State Farm Classic. Now, this one's particularly painful because Wie was actually playing brilliant golf. She'd just finished her 3rd round with a spectacular 5 under par 67, a round that included a 34 on the front 9 and a 33 on the back, capped off with a birdie on the final hole. When she walked off that 18th green, she was just one shot behind leader Yanni Tseng. Everything was going perfectly until it wasn't. On Friday, that's the day before this amazing round, we had finished her second round on hole number 9 with a solid 65. Standard procedure: head to the scoring tent behind the green, review your scorecard, sign it, and move on. Simple enough, right? Well, somehow in all the excitement, we walked out of that tent without signing her card. A well-meaning volunteer tried to help, but actually made things worse. When they realized we hadn't signed her card, they chased after her, got her to come back, and had her sign it. Everyone thought they'd fixed the problem. The volunteer was being helpful. We was like, oh, silly me, and nobody thought anything more of it. But according to the LPGA rules of play, once a player leaves the scoring area, which was defined by the roped area around the scoring tent, that's it. Game over. No takebacks, no do-overs. The really brutal part? She found out about her disqualification right after shooting a fantastic round that had put her in prime position to win. One minute she's dreaming about victory, the next minute she's packing her bags, sliding into our top 5. This is a moment that shows how golf can catch even the best players off guard. But before we dive in, I try to reach 20,000 subs by the end of March. Your support would be much appreciated, so please subscribe. Alright, let's jump in. Camilo Villegas found himself in a bizarre situation during a crucial round, specifically when dealing with what seemed to be an embedded ball. The scene unfolds with Villegas's ball coming to rest under some pine leaves. He thinks it's embedded in sand underneath. Now, normally, if your ball is embedded in the ground, you get relief without penalty. But here's the catch. Sand isn't considered ground under the embedded ball rule. Like, if sand counted, you'd be able to lift your ball every time it plugged in a bunker. So, Villegas calls in a rules official, hoping to get a favorable ruling. The official tells him no dice, no relief. But Villegas, much like Bryson DeChambeau from before, wasn't satisfied with that answer. He asks for a second opinion. Another official comes over, looks at the situation, and guess what? Same ruling. The ball's not embedded in a way that allows relief. Finally accepting his fate, Villegas had to remove the top layer of pine straw and punch out to the intermediate cut of rough. You might think having your ball buried under pine straw and sand would earn you some sympathy from the rulebook. But golf isn't really about sympathy, is it? For number 4, we've got a story that proves the importance of double-checking everything, even the most basic things. It's 2001, and Ian Woosnam is at Royal Lytham and St. Anne's for the Open Championship. He's tied for the lead with 3 others heading into the final round, and things start perfectly. He nearly makes a hole-in-one on the first hole, tapping in for birdie. He's now leading the Open Championship. Then it comes the moment that would go down in golf history. On the second tee, Woosnam's caddy, Miles Byrne, turns to him and delivers those fateful words. You're going to go ballistic. Why? Because they had 2 drivers in the bag, making it 15 clubs instead of the maximum allowed 14. It's worth noting this wasn't some obscure rule. Counting clubs is literally one of the first things a caddy is supposed to do. Woosnam's reaction became instant classic footage. He grabs the extra driver and hurls it into the bushes with the force of a man who just watched his Open Championship dreams disappear. The penalty? 2 strokes. The cost? Potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars and a shot at the claret jug. Coming into number 3, and let's dive into one of the wildest Ryder Cup meltdowns we've ever seen. This wasn't just a heated moment, it was golf's version of a parking lot brawl. The Ryder Cup is always intense, but in 2023 things reached a whole new level. Rory McIlroy and Matt Fitzpatrick had just lost their match to Patrick Cantlay and Wyndham Clark. Frustration was already in the air. Then, as McIlroy lined up a final putt to save some pride, Patrick Cantlay's caddy, Joe LaCava, decided to celebrate. And not quietly. Arms waving, hat twirling, LaCava stepped into McIlroy's line of sight, celebrating as if the match was over. McIlroy tried to focus, but the distraction was too much. He asked LaCava to move, once, twice, but LaCava wouldn't back down. You could see McIlroy's patience evaporating. After the match, the drama spilled into the parking lot. That's where McIlroy ran into Justin Thomas's caddy, Jim Bones Mackay, and the tension exploded. Words flew, tempers flared, and Shane Lowry had to hold McIlroy back as he pointed and shouted, Get out of my face! The video of McIlroy's fiery confrontation spread like wildfire, shocking fans who'd never seen him lose his cool like this. Cool-headed Rory? Not this time. It was a Ryder Cup moment no one will forget. Number 2 takes us back to 1968, to what might be the most expensive signature in golf history. Roberto De Vicenzo, fresh off winning the Open Championship the previous year, is having a fantastic final round at the Masters. He's right in contention, and it happens to be his 45th birthday. Sounds like the setup for a perfect story, right? Well, his playing partner, Tommy Aaron, marks down a par instead of a birdie on De Vicenzo's card for the 17th hole. No big deal. These things happen. Except De Vicenzo, probably distracted by thoughts of birthday cake and green jackets, signs the card without checking it. In golf, once you sign that scorecard, whatever it says becomes official, even if it's wrong. The result? Instead of being in a playoff for the Masters title, De Vicenzo had to settle for second place. His response became one of golf's most famous quotes. "What a stupid I am." Not exactly how you want to remember your 45th birthday. And finally, number 1. The moment that proves truth is stranger than fiction. It's 2021 at the Scottish Open, and Rory McIlroy is preparing to start his second round with playing partners Jon Rahm and Justin Thomas, only the world's number 1 and 3 ranked players at the time. Pretty routine scene on the 10th tee, right? Wrong. Out of nowhere, a random spectator just casually strolls onto the tee box, walks right up to McIlroy's bag, and starts rummaging through it like he's shopping at a garage sale. First, he pulls out the driver head cover. Apparently decides that's not what he wants. Then, like he's got all the time in the world, he grabs an iron instead. The most bizarre part? McIlroy, Rahm, and Thomas, 3 of the best golfers on the planet, are standing there, watching this whole scene unfold with looks of complete disbelief on their faces. The fan actually starts to walk to the practice area with the club, apparently planning to take a few practice swings. That's when security finally intervenes and escorts him off the course. But even then, the guy tries to keep McIlroy's driver head cover as a souvenir. Alright, before you go, we have another great video waiting for you right in the middle of the screen. Enjoy.